All right, man. What's going on, y'all? Today we got another special guest. I actually never met this man. We had one conversation on the phone prior to me launching the company that I'm about to launch soon. And, I was introduced to him through somebody that's late that's supposed to be here, but he'll get here and he'll just jump in. Both of these guys, they had an organization that, give a lot of these kids from where I came from, that same sport, the opportunity not only to play basketball, but to grow up as men. So I think today's interview will guide next generation and today's generation of athletes on the basketball side. So introduce yourself, Dre, man. Talk to them.
Well, my name is Andre Charles. I am one of the co-founders and the current director of development for PSA Cardinals. Long form is Pro Scholar Athletics. And what we do is we take kids from the New York metro area out of public schools and place them into independent schools throughout the Northeast through basketball. There's also an AAU component where we travel the country and we play in Nike's EYBL, Elite Youth Basketball League. So we're a Nike-sponsored team. We have teams ranging from 8th grade through 11th. And we compete nationally, and so far, so good. We've been winning.
We know that.
We know that. Keep it up, man. Trying to keep it up.
So the first question I wanted to top it off with is, what does PSA mean to you personally, right? Seeing a kid come to your organization and then take the next level and then go play college and then go to pros or wherever they go after. What is that life cycle like of a PSA student athlete for you? What does it mean to you?
I guess it has meant different things at different points. I think we're in our 11th year now. So 10 years ago, everything was just new. And so you had kids who were in a much different circumstance, kids who had been with us from, the 6th grade. And seeing those kids get to private school and then get to college was just like, my life has meant something. It was the mountaintop. And You're not really thinking that there's going to be a wave of kids coming behind them and then another wave and then another wave. At this point now, I think we spent a lot of time just thinking about how great the year 2014 would be. That would be the year that our first set of kids graduated high school. And now it's just like, kids will just send you pictures from their graduation and you're like, well, I'm already helping the next 3 sets of kids.
Right.
So at this point, things just kind of move so fast and there's so many. We started as a program that had 4 kids and now we have over 150. That it's not overwhelming, but it is like you're just on to the next set of, the next kid's life.
Right.
Really.
Right. So how did you get into it? Like, take me through your story before PSA. How did you get into it? How did you meet Munch? How did this whole thing come about? Yeah, I want to know that.
So I always joke that I'm technically Munch's first recruit. I went to college. These are my college friends. So there's Justin Weir, Jason Ford, Terrence Munch Williams, who's on his way, and myself. And we're the 4 co-founders of PSA. We all went to Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. I have a funny story of meeting every single one of them, but my story of meeting Munch is I'm walking down the street, minding my own business, just a kid from New York in Middletown, Connecticut, small college town. Right. So you just literally mind your business on your New York, like, I just... And this black dude on the porch is just like, yo, what's good, young fella? And I'm like, hello. Keep it moving. He's like, yo, you hungry? And I was like, why is this dude trying to offer me? What are they trying to abduct black people up here? Like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. He's like, nah, wifey in there cooking, yo. You hungry? Come get something to eat. And I'm like, nah, I'm good, but I appreciate it. And every time I saw him, it was that type of like genuine like love and care. Just like, yo, man, you good? Like, he knew what it was to be like a freshman from New York, kind of like, I wasn't necessarily a fish out of water because I went to boarding school, but it was also like, you don't got no money. Like, it's just meals can be hard to come by, especially if you're just eating the cafeteria food with your points. For those that don't know, points is like fake dollars. And when you're eating cafeteria food, it's a bad time for you as a freshman. And so Him and Justin played that big brother role my entire freshman year. All of my friends were seniors as a freshman, and those guys really, really took me in. What I didn't know I was walking into was that Munch and Justin were rivals in terms of intramural basketball. So Munch had stopped playing on the Wesleyan basketball team and decided that his group of friends and their basketball team that had won the previous 2 intramural championships at Wesleyan,
Right.
he didn't want to play with them. He wanted to form his own team, and I was the first recruit on his own team. So I didn't realize that I was walking into like family warfare. So he recruited me to play with him. We played. Both teams ended up going to the championship, and we lost. So that's how I really built my bond with Munch in college, and then throughout the years, he's just always stayed in contact until I guess at one point he re-recruited me to come and be a part of what was Team Scan and what is now PSA.
Right. And before I ask you the next question, I'm gonna tell you how I met Munch. So,
oh boy,
I went to a Hollows, right?
Yeah.
So our coach was like, we gotta do community service hours, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, how we gotta practice? We gotta do all of this. So I'm like, where we gonna do this at? I couldn't find nowhere that, we trying to get it signed without doing it. So
Yeah.
one of my boys was like, oh, let's go to Scan down the block. So I'm like, okay, we go to Scan, and when we get there, we meet Munch, and we're like, oh, brother, it's going to be light. He going to sign this, and we're going to be good.
Yep.
So we tell him, and Munch was like, yeah, y'all could do it here. Y'all got to be in the classrooms with the kids doing the work. I'm like, we can't just go to the gym and hoop before practice. He was like, nah, y'all going to do these hours. And I'm like, this is crazy. So he really had us doing these hours. So the person that I see now that he is kind of the same guy, because he was already teaching us some life principles, and that you can't cheat your way through things, right?
Yeah.
So throughout that whole thing, we went through it, we did it. He let us hoop, but I didn't know PSA was going to turn out to be what it turned out to be, because he was telling us about what he was trying to build way back then. And I'm talking about I graduated like 3 years ago from college, so that's about 9 years ago that he was talking about this. And it's interesting, that to see it come to fruition, to see so many kids go through the process, to see so many kids grow from it and still talk about it. Like I went to school with Gustav, you know what I mean?
Oh, word?
So Gustav, he's helped me in my camps back in the day. So it's and that connection, and it all pays itself, you know what I mean? But the question I did want to ask is, what's the process of like creating an AU program, getting sponsored by Nike? Like, you guys went and built it, but for people that like guys are trying to build their own structure and teams, and I know there's a lot of teams in New York, but tell us about that process.
Well, the ways that I've seen it done, the simplest way and the easiest way is to give birth to a child that's 6'8", at the age of 12. That kid becomes a nationally ranked player, and they will give you a team, right? If Amani Bates is your son, you'll get a team. That's number one. Most people don't give birth to the kid, so they try to attach themselves to a kid, and then they try to build a program around that kid. If they're even more fortunate, a group of kids,
right?
Like 1 or 2. That's the other way. These seem to be the ways that it happens kind of the fastest, quote unquote. If you're trying to build one from the ground up, then it becomes about, you got to have a culture, right? That's number one. Before you start inviting kids into a gym, you probably got to have an idea of what it is you're trying to teach them. I would say start young. If you're trying to get into it by the high school age, you're going to have to deal with a whole lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of politics. And also the money that it's going to cost you to do these things, because grassroots is getting younger and younger, right? They're traveling the country now in the 8th grade, like in a league, right? Made Hoops is now almost a national league. They're playing a national championships by the time you get to Peace Jam. And so those are 14-year-olds. So I think the way that I've seen it done most solidly is for coaches to get a middle school team, usually around 5th or 6th grade, develop kids Like they learn the art of managing a team, right? Managing the parents, dealing with all the things that come with being around kids, right? When you take kids on the road, it's not just you play 2 hours of basketball and then the kids go home and then that's it. It's you got to manage them in the hotel. You have to feed them. You have to do the laundry. You have to make sure that if this is happening during the school year, they're doing their homework. You have to make sure every kid can get to you to travel to wherever it is you're going, and then every kid has a way to get back home. You have to manage the expenses, right? The fundraising that goes into the uniforms, the sneakers, the vans, the food, the cost of gas. You have to be able to manage the parents and their expectations, whatever those might be, and whatever you might think is normal is probably not going to be the normal expectations. You have to deal with turnover, right? Not just on the court, but like the fact that kids are going to come in and out of your door and you don't really have control over that. This is all the stuff that, as you said, Gustav is learning.
Yeah, he talks
This
to
is
me
all
about
the
this.
stuff. That's what we try to do. We try to make sure that guys kind of see what it is at the younger levels before they start to move up. Because the higher you go, the harder these things become to manage because there's just more pressure.
Right, right. So what is, if there's a model, like, you know, New York is known for, we're known for basketball and many other stuff, but the Hoopers, right? If there's a model kid, you know, what does a PSA kid look like? Or what are you guys trying to develop and the values you're trying to instill in the PSA kids?
I think the number one thing that PSA kids have is honesty. You have to be honest with yourself, because if you can't be honest with yourself, it's going to be hard for you to be honest with other people. It's also going to be hard for you to accept the truth. And that's what we do, is we're in constant pursuit of truth. So the number one thing about PSA kids is that you're going to be dealing with kids who understand that part of themselves, to say, you can tell me whatever it is that I need to hear, and I'll actually listen to you, right? That's not going to be the thing that makes me run through the door,
Right.
And get out of here. And also, we tend to have, we've been extremely fortunate to just get kids who, they'll tell the truth to their own detriment, right? You'll have kids who just you're like, yo, you're not supposed to tell me that. like I'm the adult, you probably supposed to hide that from me.
Right.
But we get kids who I think one of the greatest examples of that is Chris McCullough. Right? Chris McCullough has always been a person who's just been extremely honest with us, right? I can't speak to what anybody's relationship is with people outside of myself or our unit, but we've always had those kids. I think that's the number one thing, is after honesty, kids who aren't afraid to fail. They accept that failure is going to happen, because you're going to come into an environment that's going to challenge you to do things you've never really had to do before, physically, emotionally, mentally, sometimes spiritually, right? You're going to have faith in things that you don't really have control over. So asking people to step outside of their comfort zone can be a really, really hard thing. And I think our kids are more willing than other kids that I've seen to step outside of that. I think another thing I'd point out is our kids are vulnerable. Our kids are, we get kids at different phases of their adolescence. So some kids come in with very different understandings of who they are at that point, right? And so their acceptance of love can be at different points. Their acceptance of seeing male role models can be at different points.
Right.
But they're kids who at a certain point, they go, you know what? I can let this guard down, and I'm okay in this environment. And that kid might be a completely different human being outside the confines of PSA. And we've had many examples of those kids too, where it's like people who knew this kid in any other circumstance look at that kid now and go, wait, how did that happen? How is he getting up and clapping? How is he getting water for everybody else? How's this kid smiling? So I think our kids are very willing to be vulnerable, and I think that comes from being around black men who are also that way.
And I think that last point, I was going to get to that, because one thing you don't see, and I have this conversation a lot, is trust. I believe is one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
But vulnerability, you young men at that age sometimes, especially coming from, black kids, they don't know how, right? So the how to, you're trying to tell them, like, it's like telling a kid without a work ethic, work hard.
Yeah.
Work harder. Sometimes you gotta teach them how. They have to see it, right? So when you guys speak of yourselves, and I hold you guys to the regard, which is a good thing because you're doing this God's work with these kids. How did you guys learn to implement this, and then how are you implementing it to the kids? This vulnerability, this awareness of who you are, this honesty, this trusting. Like, how are you guys going about it, practicing it yourselves?
I think one of the greatest things that we have is we have a bunch of different personality types. As black men, it's not 8 of the same type of dude.
Right.
I think in common we have the fact that we're all honest guys, hardworking guys, but we have different approaches. So kids get different voices on what it is, or examples of what it is that they might be looking to like what they connect to, just in terms of manhood, right? I know that sometimes the shiny stuff helps, right? So it helps to, have a Nike deal because kids like Nikes. So,
right.
Like I told Munch a long time ago, I was like, man, you got to stop wearing like whatever that is.
Listen, I see Munch during some of these games. I'm like, I could see him in his jacket. You guys are the best dressed coaches in the city. Like I see it from afar, and I'm like, Munch look like he got those Gator two-tones on. Like, come on, man.
I told you got to start wearing Jordans, right? Like, if you're going to wear Nikes, like, don't just wear, like, random Nikes that people don't really know. Because when you're talking to kids, that's going to be a thing. Like, it's like sugar, right? If something is sweet, the kid's going to be like, I'll take that, right? And it could be the healthiest thing in the world, but if it tastes disgusting, it's going to be hard for them to take it, right? So I see it as like we have guys who are everywhere on the spectrum. But if you're a kid that looks at the Flash, there are coaches that have like the Flash, right? But they're preaching the same message as the guy that's just kind of like, material things don't matter, right? And if you're the kid that's like, yo, man, I'm just in my own zone. Like, I just want to do my own thing and material things don't matter. There's that coach for you, right? There's the coach that has the like really aggressive style. That's like, come on, you got to do the thing. But then there's also the coach that's relaxed. It's like, yo, I'm not yelling. Like, I'll wait till you're focused, and then we'll do the thing. We'll move on because we're all adults here, right? At the end of the day. And we have different voices. I think the way that they watch us communicate, before that, actually, you're watching all black men, right? So, like, every job that has to be done is being done by some black man, right? Who doesn't get to say, I'm above this, right? So from the laundry to, if it was coming to the scan gym, back when we were in Malali, it was watching Munch like mop the floor before the practice, right? Literally, I think he does a great job of setting a tone of whatever needs to get done, minus driving, because he can't drive. Everything except for driving, I'm willing to do. And I think when you're working with people and they see you lead from the front in that way, they take that as well. I think the kids see everybody else kind of living that and embodying that idea of like, yo, whatever the job is that has to get done, we're just going to do it, right? So like coaching 17s, my individual job might be to get up that morning and lead like whatever the morning preparation is, right? So we tend to do pool work. We'll do yoga stretching. We'll do some mindfulness exercises. And then that's before we get to film, right? So in the morning, from the time these guys get up, they're seeing Munch wake them up, and it might be like 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And then you're getting to another coach who's there doing all of the workout that you have to do in that morning with you. Then the next thing you're doing is getting ready to come do a film scout that you're watching the coach set up for you, who's done the scout, right? And then you get to the game, and the same guy that did the water, right, or the guy that did the film scout is now handing you water at the game, right? Or mopping the floor, or cleaning the bench so that everything is fine for you. Like, there literally is nothing that anybody gets to say, I'm above this.
Yeah.
And I think our kids see that, and it's hard to be, it's hard to feel as though you are above doing any particular job when that's just the environment you're in.
Yeah, I think that's dope. You know, I've never looked at it in that context. You know, I was more expecting practice is hard, and that's what you hear, but that's like as real as it gets, because you guys have just opened up a space of comfortability where you're just doing stuff, right? It's not like, oh, I'm too better, and then it plays out on the court, because you can see it when you guys watch, you guys play. This top player doing stuff is talking to a teammate, cheering on the bench, and it's not like forced. You know what I mean? But take us through the sacrifices your players make, because a lot of your athletes, they go from the Bronx to boarding school.
Yeah.
And they stay there the whole year. And I think for some of the listeners, you know, they come from different walks of life, right?
Yeah.
So take them through what it is like for an 8th grade kid leaving his neighborhood, his environment, his safe haven, to go to a place where, you know, it's he's never probably seen or been comfortable with. Take us through that.
So for our kids who are exploring boarding schools, we'll start with just visits, right? Recently, traditionally, all of our kids have gone to boarding school. It's been recent that we've had more kids staying home. Part of that is just, you know, finding the best fit for each kid. We try to treat each child individually.
Right.
And so if the parents agree that boarding school is a great option, then we'll start with visits. And we've built relationships now with 60 boarding schools in the region. So it's trying to make sure that you have the right school to match the right child. Right? Like, some children need more one-on-one attention, and they need a much smaller environment. Some don't need the distraction of girls. They need to be somewhere where it's just all dudes, and they can just focus on hooping and school. And some need a very big environment, right? One of our Cameroonian students, Frank Kepnang, is a great example of this, right? Yeah. And he also speaks to the international side of what we do. But he was at the McDuffie School, but for all of his skill set, right, which is he's a phenomenal basketball player, but this is a dude who could possibly be the president of his country, literally, right? He can do anything he wants to do.
Right.
It's about getting him to.
Oh, look who's here! Look who's here! Late.
Oh my!
Late. He got the Kobe's on. So I gotta show him some love.
Oh my!
You get right in, man. Jump right in.
Yeah.
Hi. Good to see you, Terrence.
Hi.
Hey, Andre.
Nice and on time.
Just went off your page.
He's endlessly getting at me about
being late.
His
yeah.
in life.
I'm on time when it matters.
Right. Listen, as long as your kids are not here to see this, you guys are good. You know, your kids are not. They will hear this, but they're not here to see this, right? Munch is late today, guys. So in practice, if he make you run, that's on him, right?
Yeah, man. 2020, rough start for you.
Multitask, man.
But we're talking a little bit about the schedule and the sacrifices your kids make, you know, and we know you guys send a lot of your kids to prep schools, right? And he was alluding to the fact that there's different types of kids, and you guys got deep-rooted relationships with different prep schools, and you know that cycle changes. But you guys take the kids there on trips prior to get them comfortable. So let me hear it from your perspective. How's that process been?
The placement process.
Yeah,
it's been interesting. I mean, sometimes the administration changes, so I think one of the things for us is just continue to put our best foot forward and let them know who we are and what we stand for, what we're trying to look for. I think a big thing is trying to figure out each school, what they stand for, what they're interested in, and not just from a student. I mean, from an athlete standpoint, more so from a student. The culture of the school, the size of the school, is it co-ed, is it not co-ed? All of those things are very important when you're trying to place the kids. So we got to consistently not just have the relationships, but also revisit them, refresh them, and understand who the people, like the coaches move or the administration move. It's always a new thing. So, and it's difficult just to be from afar. People hear of your program, but they don't know who you are, and face to face, it has its value. So like they need to know that you're going to be very hands on and you're going to be supportive, and expect them to be supportive back.
Yeah, and to your point about like what the kids experience, one of the things that that Munch realized early was you want to limit, or you want to at least have as much control over the amount of shock that a kid's going to face, putting them in completely new environments. So one of the things that happened early was junior boarding schools, right? Being able to place kids as older students in environments where there would be younger kids around them.
Right.
So they might be far away, they might have to get adjusted to the academics, but there'll also be older kids on campus where that gives them a little bit of room to adjust, as opposed to everything's new and you're the lowest on the totem pole as a ninth grader going into a school that, you know, now has, you know, what looks to you like grown ass men. So that's a thing that that helps for placing middle school students. I think for the older kids, it's about figuring out what it's learning their personalities, what they can and can't handle, and then trying to place them in places where they're not. It's having a plan, right? You don't want to have to make U-turns if you can avoid them. So you want to place students in places where you might have a plan that says, okay, 2 years here, and then if we do everything right, you'll have 2 years somewhere else, right? Or places where it's like, no, this could work out for 4 years.
Right.
What's bad is when you send a kid somewhere and the kid is like, nah.
And they'll tell you.
Yeah, this is not it. And it's for reasons that are not in your control. Those things are not. That's not really a good situation when you have kids who are like, this level of, for instance, if it's athletic,
right.
This level is not helping me get better. If it's academic, this is too easy. This is not challenging enough. Or if you're just in an environment where like they're just like they don't have the resources, right? Like they just don't. They don't have the resources to actually like give me the things I need. Some kids actually need to gain weight, like for instance, before they get to college. And if a kid is like, yeah, they don't feed me enough at this place, that's a bad look.
So we were talking a bit about Frank, and Frank comes from where I come from, Cameroon, right? How do you get a kid like international? What's the international program like, right? Because there's a kid like that. I know I came here. He probably didn't know. Did he know English when he got here?
He understood it, and he was learning to speak it.
Right. So
but he could understand what
that process. Take me through getting Frank, and it's like, all right, I got to cultivate this. I got to make this work. I don't want to hear that.
I mean, I think it's just like you said, trying to figure out what's his start. You know, it's not just the basketball side. I mean, when he came over, he was just a raw piece of clay as far as like the basketball sense. But then, like Dre said, having a 4 to 5 year process, right, where you got to give him a chance to get adjusted to the city, New York. The school could be Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, the academics, the people. So you can't rush it. And I think he was a sharp kid, and it just took time. And you got to put him in a safe haven where whoever you're dealing with has time to allow him to grow as a student, as a young man, and then third as a basketball player. Right? So I think he was able to, as he went forward, now he could articulate every single thing. Like if he's comfortable in the classroom, if he's uncomfortable with the people, or does he feel like he's being treated differently than his classmates in any form or fashion, he's a sharp guy, right? And now you're to the point where he's discussing colleges, what he should be looking for. He's discussing his major. He's discussing things that he likes to do outside of basketball, like go to the museum. He's into computers and just all of this different stuff. And for us, try to get him to explore those things, but ultimately understand that the basketball is just a smokescreen for him to be able to use it and hopefully change his whole entire family's life. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But also don't limit him educationally. Like if he says, hey, I want to go to Stanford instead of Kentucky, you have to respect that because he understands the value of the education process. Right? But if he flips it and says, hey, I'm in a rush to try to get to the NBA, I want to go to Duke or Kansas or any school that he feels is best preparing him for that, you have to respect the fact that he had a family back home and hopefully he can help change their lives.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But,
that's huge.
I mean, he's been great. I mean, he's very independent, an independent thinker, a leader on and off the court, and I mean, we're ecstatic and lucky, honestly, to have him in our program because he does a great job with the other guys, like challenging them to be more.
Right.
If you ever see him in the airport, he's gonna have his laptop out, he's gonna have his textbook out, he's gonna be studying. He takes his academics to like just as serious as anyone else, if not higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he understands the value of him being here. But
Right.
I think a big process to that is watching guys, in a sense, not become Americanized or spoiled or let this stuff get the best of him. Like, he hasn't changed from, hey, this pair of sneakers has it. A pair of Jordans is the same pair of Air Force Ones. It doesn't matter to him. It's just something materialistic that he needs to carry on with his day.
Right.
Right? When guys can lose their mind in this process and just start taking advantage of everything that's going on. He's not like that. He's just a pure-hearted, great young man. Like, literally, you're lucky to have him.
And I think y'all, because, you know, kids, I know where we come from, right? Frank could attest to it. You know, I think you guys are taking a kid like that and helping him get to the next stage of his life, right? And I think it alludes to the next question or the next topic is in where we come from, right? The basketball culture and everything. Scratch all that, right? You guys are literally giving kids opportunities that will transcend past sports, right? Because many times parents have a job of parenting. That's one. But where the trust is cultivated outside in the atmosphere where there's so much influences, you guys are at the high line of the impact for these kids, right? So this interview, I wanted to continue to congratulate and thank you guys just for that feat because that's an investment of it all because you guys, you talk about a plan. It don't just like, all right, these kids are going to go through this. I'm going to call all these coaches and they come recruit it. No, it's like, you're going to be here. This might be the best place for you. And then what do you want to do? Because you guys had James Book Night. I didn't hear about the kid till senior year. And I'm like, how does this kid hidden? Like, where was this kid at for 4 years? And now, you know, the other day I see a highlight, UConn, Duncan. But then you see him do an interview, you know, about the passing of Kobe, and he's well spoken, right? And it attests to you guys going back and doing a media day way before programs have done it. And you know, there's a lot of stuff that I watch. I pay attention. You guys, those things prepare those kids for moments like that. You're sitting at a podium and they're asking you questions. You gotta be prepared for that because you can get itched off $1 million of a contract because you don't know how to speak. Like the shop, they were talking to Mo, and they were telling him like, you have any other interests? Like, because the kid's a smart kid. He's like, wait, because I'm smart, you don't think I focus in basketball? You know what I mean? But those things get confusing. But if he doesn't have guys like yourself, and I know you guys are coaching them up and continuously telling them how to prepare, right? Because it's gonna be life after sports, and if you can't speak, you can't do certain things, and that thing's gonna stop, right? But what are the kids today, what are they struggling with most, right? And you don't even have to say basketball. Like, what are these qualities? Because I look at the 4 pillars, and I think we talked about this a lot. There's a physical aspect, there's a mental aspect, there's a financial aspect, and I'll say personal. There's a personal aspect, right? Around those 4 pillars, what do you think the kids are struggling to integrate into their processes as an athlete and then as a person?
I mean, I know Dre always says guys struggle with being comfortable not being identified as a basketball player, right? And I think just not allowing someone just to say, oh, I know Tyson Etienne, he can shoot the ball. It's like, well, do you know he likes photography? Do you know he, likes music and wants to be involved in it in some form or fashion? Like, I think the challenge a lot of our guys they start off with everyone saluting them because they're talented on the basketball court. But then it turns into, all right, well, how can we eliminate that and create all these different aspects to who you are as a man, right? And as you get older, start to experiment, be comfortable failing, right? One of the best things I've ever done is canoeing. People like canoeing. I'm like, yeah, like it was one of the first things I've done when I was in boarding school, and I still love it to this day. But and obviously a bunch of other things. But we as men, we're not afraid to not be, you know, just penciled into, all right, I'm a basketball guy. Now it's more like, nah, you got all these different layers to yourself. And I think that's one of the things, especially like black and brown boys, as Dre says, like we gotta be versatile. Right? And being able to understand you only playing like 2 hours of basketball per day. Right? Like people are like, oh, I'm playing all this basketball. Like, nah, you really just playing 2 hours. Whether it's a game, the most 3, like you're on the physical court 2 hours. And you got 22 more hours to decide what you want to do with that day. And when you really break it down, a lot of guys don't make it, not because of the 2 hours on the court, because they really don't make it because of the 22 hours off the court. Like the partying, the drinking, the smoking, the lack of academia. Like that's the conversations that we're having. Like it's not about this basketball. Like you're good at that and we can get you better. That's fine. But we really need you to have some type of stability. Another thing I believe is personally like a lack of long-term thinking, right? This, like when you talk to people, I'm just trying to get through the day. But it really needs to be, what are we trying to do in 6 months?
Right.
And when we conquer that, what are we trying to do in the next year? Because we're going to conquer that. And then expecting yourself to reach these goals and then preparing for those goals later. If you look at us when we were younger, everybody's like, man, I'm just trying to make it happen. Like, I just need enough to get through the day. And your parents are trying to survive and they scratching and clawing. And you see that and you think, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. But it's more like, no, I need to prepare for, I'm going to graduate. Right? I'm going to go to college and I'm going to graduate. All right, well, we need to start getting your resume together. Right? We need to start doing some internships. Like all these different things for life after the 4 years of college. But then there's all these obstacles that are set up for you not to be prepared for after college is over, right? How many times does James Booknight get a chance to work, like have a legitimate job? Like there's a kid who, and most of these kids that's playing AAU basketball don't have time to ever have a job. So if you don't have a job in middle school, you don't have a job in high school, you don't have a job in college, when the basketball is over, right? If you're not playing NBA overseas or something, your resume is blank. It just says I played basketball, but you're trying to get a real job. So it's up to us to say, all right, well, we need to do some things in the next 4, 5, 6 years, whether it's a summer internship, whether it's volunteer here, whether it's volunteer there. You need to do some things that is going to be able to go on your resume, right? So it's just long-term thinking. I think that's the one thing a lot of guys struggle with, and we're trying to get our guys better at that every single day, and ourselves.
I think service is another thing. Like, I don't think enough of a premium is put on young people understanding, like, giving, right? I think a lot of times people set their goals and they go, I'm doing this stuff because at some point it's going to help me help this person or these people. And then that's the goal. And now we're watching kids actually do that stuff, and then they're like, okay, I did it, but I'm not happy. Right? I got the money. I got my mom the thing. I took my family out the hood, and I'm miserable. Right? How? How is it that I have more money than, like, the money was what I wanted, changing my family circumstances was what I wanted, and I'm sad? This doesn't make any sense. Right? And it's like, well, nobody really programmed into them that life is about service. So you never got a why, like what the purpose of life was in general, right? Which is that it's more than about you. And particularly in sports, because it's tied directly to money and people's ability to access money through other people. Everything is done for the kids, and they're taught to think about themselves because that makes them more controllable.
Right.
I watched 2 things, maybe 3 yesterday that was like the same story in different forms, right? I watched Eddie Curry talk about his experience in the NBA, right? Where he's like, ultimately, I was a young kid. I came in, they gave me all this money. I just didn't know what to do with it. I never, it was just like overwhelming, basically.
Right.
And then I woke up one day and I didn't have any money. And then the first part of Michael Vick's thing was the same story, right?
Yeah.
I came into this, I didn't really know what I was doing. It's all this money, and I just had a bunch of people around, and it was overwhelming. And then you watch the same, different versions of the same thing happen, and it's like, I got frustrated with just the fact that it's like, how many times does this have to happen over and over and over again before, one, someone steps in to say, if you make your life not about you, but about your service to the world beyond yourself, right? That's going to stop a lot of this, right? I think kids are missing that because, one, the phone tells them it's about me, right? My social media is about me projecting me to you so you'll like me. And quantifying how much everybody likes me. And without getting too technical about it, like, we know that it gets into like your dopamine levels. This affects your happiness, like chemically, right? Your ability to be liked. And if you don't have something in you that says that I need to be doing things like this, basketball has to be about something bigger than me.
Right.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the money, but it's not about buying a house, buying the sneakers, buying the things. It's about how can things be helped by this. I thank God for LeBron and what he's doing right now.
Right.
Where kids are aspiring now to say, you know what, I can open a school too. You know what, I can put all my friends on so they can be business people. And it's not like Michael Vick's story where it's 30 dudes just living in a house.
Right. Literally.
Right? Like, I think when people start to see that, like, service has to be a part of what you're doing, I think that narrative is going to change drastically.
And that's important because you guys talked about the things that we want to change, right?
Yeah.
What do you guys attest to being the biggest problem of why they don't know these things should be something they want to change? Does that make sense?
I would say the line Dre says all the time: no one ever thinks it can go wrong.
Yeah.
Like you have data, you have statistics, you have information. You're, in a sense, a professional at something. And you tell people, like, hey, if you do this, this is going to go wrong. So you should do this, this, and that. But they always think they're an exception to the rule. Or that's just one. Or the flip side is one person made it through the tunnel, so I'm going to make it through the tunnel. Right. But it's really like that's not normal. Like, that one person is special.
I'm him. I'm not the 100 other people that didn't make it, right? Everybody's Andy Dufresne, and nobody's ever the dudes that just locked up in the jail the whole time.
Right. So how do you guys get, you talked about it a bit, your schedule. You wake up in the morning, and you mentioned mindfulness, you mentioned film, and you talking about 16, 17-year-old kids. It's like, I just want to sleep. I want to hoop. This is what I'm used to. The thought of them meditating, what is that experience like? How do they accept it? Like, how do you get them to accept it?
Well, it is much easier now than it was when it first started. But at this point, I think guys go, one, whatever you guys are doing, it works. so they're more willing to try it.
Right.
I think that they see some positive results from it. The part about yoga, right, is like they don't really know the mindfulness side of it. But what they do know is the stretch. It's hard, right? You give a basketball player something difficult, and they're just like, oh, okay, well, it's a challenge. I like it. And so you kind of like disguising the mindfulness part in the fact that it's difficult, right?
Makes sense.
The fact that I try to physically, at this point, still do the same things with them. So they don't get an excuse out of it, right? But the other thing is I can do things that are harder than the things that they can do, right? So if they see me do those things, it's the same thing as like a physical version of the Jordans, right? It's a thing that it's like, okay, well, I want to get like that. The mindfulness side comes in when they're in these difficult yoga positions.
Right.
But now, what are we talking about, right? And then we get to the visualization part. We get to speaking about larger concepts of what it means to be, basically at peace. I think we as black men talk about love a lot in their presence. I think they're constantly hearing black men tell them, I love you. I think that opens up another portal for them, like in their minds of just like, whatever it is going on,
Right.
this is different, but I've never heard these things before. And I think at a certain point, they just become attuned to being in that type of environment where it's just like, yo, I'm around people that I just constantly see either like doing things that add to that mindfulness. They're always working. They're always talking about like love, but in action, not just like, hey man, I love you. It's like this person went and did the thing that comes with somebody actually like taking care of me,
Right.
which is them showing me love.
Right.
And it, all the same principles we talked about like at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? It's all those things of just like, you're gonna be in a better place if you can calm your mind down and don't let it run. We also take their phones, so
That's
Yeah.
that's something you guys that's a rule. You go away and the phone's is gone.
once we get to the hotel, we get off the plane. So the way that we've been doing it the past couple of years is we'll practice. We play Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
So we will practice Thursday night / Friday morning, which is at midnight. So from midnight to 2, and then from 2 in the morning, we'll go straight to the airport, and we're usually on the first flight out. So we'll be at the airport from like 2 to 6 a.m., catch a 6 a.m. flight, and go to whatever city it is that we're playing in. They'll stretch at the airport, which is the first mindfulness session, right? And they're usually just kids, so they're like sleeping on the floor.
Right.
Then once we get off the plane, they'll stretch again while we're getting the vans and getting all the travel stuff ready to go. That's the second mindfulness part. And then once we get to the hotel from the airport, the phones are gone. So they've had their phones that whole time. But once we're in the trip, from that Saturday morning or that Friday evening to Sunday, phones is done. They get them back when we get to the airport on that Sunday.
So what are you guys trying to really get out of that? Like, what are you guys trying to impose on them from your perspective?
The stuff they know or the stuff we know?
Both.
So the stuff they know is we're trying to stop them from being on Instagram, stop them from being on social media so they don't have to see the write-ups of that. Munch usually tell them, yo, we just don't want you to have contact with a bunch of people who are going to be sending you things that are about you and not about the team, which can happen. The stuff they don't know is they don't know about blue light, right? We'll talk to them about these things, but they're not taking science classes on this stuff, right? So they don't know about like how that stuff is affecting their melatonin levels and like their ability to sleep,
Right.
and their ability to heal after these games.
Very true.
Again, you don't want to have them exposed to social media and having their dopamine levels going up and down and like raging because they just can't put the phones down. And then the distraction level of just like when you have less devices to distract you, it forces them to bond with one another.
That's
right?
very
Our kids actually have conversations with each other, right? And they don't have video games. So
I've got to meet a lot of some of your players, and one thing they do know is the business side of the sport. How does that happen? You guys go through these real conversations?
It's a real conversation. Like we'll literally break down how events are ran and how their recruitment is being used in this event for someone else to earn funds. We'll break down literally like, all right, your high school coach is an event, and this is how much it costs, this is how much the packets are, just financially how much every single time you step on the court, someone else is earning something. Like the concept of your ranking number, attracting X amount of coaches to this arena, making them pay X amount of dollar to watch you play, and every single time you step on the court, someone is making money off you. And understanding that, like we'll talk about pretty much everything, like, and it's okay. They're smart.
Listen,
right?
man.
Yeah.
And
Ty broke some things down to me, and I was just like, what? Like, I knew that, but how are you understanding it in that complexity? You know what I mean? And that's a testament to what you guys do.
And they should understand it, right? Like, why are people hiding this information from these kids, right? Like, I was talking with Munch earlier this week about the fact that, like, kids outside of our program, when you break down to them the conversations that they should just be having in their recruitment, right? Like, just of, like, what are the questions that you should be asking the coach that's recruiting you, right? Number one, is the head coach calling you or is the assistant coach calling you? And at what stage are you? If the head coach is not calling you, you don't have an offer, right? Like, they may have officially offered you, but you don't really have an offer because you need that investment, right? That's a sign of that investment. Second, are you talking about how many minutes you're going to be playing when you get there, right? What are the guarantees that you're going to have walking into your situation? Most people are trying not to give you a guarantee, right? If you're going into these situations with basically walking in and not having things confirmed, this is how kids end up transferring, right? They get in a situation and they're like, yo, this is not what we discussed. This is not what it is. And it's like, yo, you're walking into the situation without confirmations. You're walking into the situation without any backing. Right? Once you get there, once you sign your letter of intent, it's over for you.
Yeah.
It's over. You literally signed away your freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you don't get it back without waiting a year. And even then, most kids don't even know that, like, these schools can reject other schools that you might want to go to. So it's like, yo, I want to transfer. And they're like, nope, can't transfer here. Can't transfer here. Can't transfer here. Nope. You want to go there? Nope, can't transfer there either.
That's tough. So last two questions, right? How many kids have you guys sent to college, if you guys know the number, right? And then for the athletes listening, right, what do you, and I want both point of views, what do you guys want them to get out of this, right? If there's words that you guys can express as thought leaders, not just in basketball, but in sports, right, because you're aspiring athletes, what do you want them to get out of these conversations, right, that the kids that you're not directly having a physical impact on?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's 70 guys.
70?
In the last 7 classes.
Wow.
So we have 7 classes, 70 guys went off to school.
71.
Oh.
Odd numbers.
71. All scholarship?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I mean, that's a big thing.
That is huge.
I tell parents all the time, like, the conversation starts with the ability to go to school for free. Whether you're going to high school for free, college for free, and then trying to get a master's for free, right? If you can find a way to do all of those, then you debt free into the world, right? And you can chase your dreams. Like, I have no issues with guys saying, hey, I got my degree, and I just want to hang out for a little while. Do your thing. And you'll figure out what you want to do, right? You can chase basketball for the rest of your life. Just have something to fall back on. Sometimes it's tug of war down the stretch, but we make sure they get it done as best we can. The one thing I would say to people that's not in our program is information from us to you is free. Like, I think any of us that you reach out to and you don't know something, or you want to have an extra voice or extra ear or extra thought process, like, we're going to always give you the answers that we learned, especially because there weren't many people that were like, hey, don't go left. We had to go left, fail to go right, right? So now I'm at the point, especially, I'm like, look, whoever reaches out to me and asks any questions, I mean, you've been there before.
Yeah, he's not lying. He's not lying.
I'm going to answer it, right?
I told him the story about Malali, how we came in to do our hours and we thought we was going in to do it for free, and you was like, listen, y'all better take care of these kids, but I'm a sign but y'all gonna do this work. But he ain't lying.
We gotta continue to teach each other, right, and help each other and grow in the world. But I think it's important that people don't feel like the ones who they quote unquote believe are on the top are closed minded, right? And you don't want to allow people to just float through life and make all these wrong turns when you can help them. Right. So I just want people to know I'm an open book. And the guys around me are the same, and everyone wants you to win, even if you're not in our program. It doesn't hurt us.
That's huge.
It doesn't hurt us.
That's huge.
Yeah, man. I think the kids, I'm so happy for social media in that it's the first time that I think student athletes have ever had a currency that they could actually take with them and quantify. So anything that allows for them to have some power, I'm always for it. And information is that power. I send out information to our guys all the time, and they'll be like, what is this?
Right.
Because it's just like, yo, like, I think I sent you a link.
Yep.
Yeah, and I sent you one about podcasting, right? Specifically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had sent that, I think right after I sent it to you, I sent it to a bunch of our guys. And they were like, yo, Dre, you starting a podcast? I'm like, no, man, this is just so you guys can see, right? Like, at some point, there's a bunch of different ways for you to be able to use the fact that there's notoriety
Right.
for you and to leverage this stuff.
Right.
But there's also, as Munch said, somebody's always making money off of from the time you walk into high school, right? It's starting to move to middle school now, but from the time you go to high school, somebody is making money off of your ability to put a ball in a basket. You should understand that, and then you should also know how to get some leverage in that exchange, independent of the people around you. Right? You as a student should be able to leverage that. We tell guys all the time, right? Use basketball, don't let basketball use you. So that's what you should be doing. You should be understanding, because what's going to happen is the Eddie Curry, Mike Vick stuff, right? You get used to just being like, oh, no, you take care of that. Oh, no, you take care of that. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know. Why? Because I was too lazy to know, right? It's not, these kids are not stupid, right? They're super smart. And they put it, that genius, I think that's the last thing to say, right? Is it a thing that we echo to these kids all the time is the fact that they're geniuses, right? And I think more people need to echo this. You're a genius. You're a genius if it wasn't basketball, if it was painting, if it was the cello, if it was chess, if it was anything else, they would be calling you a savant. They would be calling you a genius. They would be heralding you and talking about how smart you are. Because it's basketball or because it's football, all of a sudden it's just natural God-given ability. It always takes out the fact that you work mad hard, that your brain has to process all these same things that anybody else has to process. And you do it at a higher level. You should start seeing yourself as a genius in multiple ways and acting accordingly. If you see yourself as a genius, you will act accordingly, and I think you'll get a different result.
Sheesh, man, I'm gonna have to have you guys back, man. Thank you guys once again.
Appreciate
Thank you
you
guys for coming and spreading the wealth, the knowledge, and helping these kids. You know what I mean? Just giving them the guidance, and you know that's all we can do, right? To pay back. So thank you once again.
That's a fact. Thank you.
All right.